"You were my backup plan while he was my passion," she announced without shame. I disappeared that night. 7 months later he left her homeless and pregnant. She tracked me down at my new penthouse desperate. Looking back, I should have recognized that comfort can become complacency, but when you're building something steady, you don't expect the foundation to crack from the inside. Emily and I had been together for 4 years, the kind of relationship that felt like home, predictable in the best way, built on Sunday mornings at the Phoenix Farmers Market, monthly camping trips to Sedona, and quiet evenings in our Scottsdale townhouse cooking together. I'm a commercial pilot, 31, based out of Phoenix Sky Harbor flying domestic routes that kept me home most weeks, and Emily was 28, a dental hygienist at one of those upscale Scottsdale practices where clients paid premium prices. We weren't flashy people. My salary was comfortable but not extravagant, her income was steady, and together we'd built this life that felt solid, the kind where you start casually discussing whether to upgrade to a house with a backyard or maybe adopt a dog once my schedule stabilized. Everything changed the weekend of her 10-year high school reunion in Tempe, an event I'd offered to attend, but she insisted she wanted to go alone to reconnect with old friends without having to introduce a boyfriend all night, which seemed reasonable at the time. She came home that Saturday around 2 in the morning, flushed and energized in a way I hadn't seen in months, talking rapidly about people I'd never heard her mention, but one name kept surfacing: Damien, her ex-boyfriend from college, apparently now some traveling musician who'd played an impromptu acoustic set at the reunion after-party. "He's doing exactly what he always dreamed about," she said, eyes bright as she scrolled through her phone showing me his Instagram filled with dimly lit bar stages and vintage guitars. Living this completely authentic creative life, just him and his music and the open road. I thought it was nice she'd reconnected with old friends, that maybe seeing different life paths would make her appreciate what we'd built, but within a week I noticed her texting constantly, phone angled away whenever I entered the room, smiling at the screen in ways that made something uncomfortable twist in my chest. 2 weeks after the reunion, Emily started criticizing things she'd never mentioned before, how my career was just following routes someone else planned, how our Sunday routine was the same thing every week like we're retired at 30, how our camping trips were predictable because we always went to the same spots. Damien's playing a show at the Crescent Ballroom on Thursday, she mentioned casually over breakfast one Wednesday. "I'm thinking about going. You don't mind, right?" I didn't mind, or at least I told myself I didn't, but Thursday she came home past midnight smelling like cigarette smoke and craft beer, talking about how incredible the performance was, how Damien's songs were raw and honest in ways most people are too afraid to be. The pattern established itself quickly: music venues on weeknights when she knew I'd be prepping for morning flights, suddenly caring about local bands she'd never mentioned in 4 years, developing opinions about vinyl records and the authenticity of underground music scenes. Her wardrobe shifted too, professional dental scrub style giving way to ripped jeans and vintage band shirts, leather jackets that weren't hers appearing draped over our furniture. "Work's been so stressful," she'd say when I asked about her late nights. "I just need to blow off steam." But her girls' nights always coincided with nights Damien was performing somewhere in Phoenix, and the emotional distance between us grew wider even when we were sitting on the same couch, her physically present but mentally somewhere else, somewhere I wasn't invited to follow. I started noticing other changes, our townhouse slowly transforming as she replaced my framed aviation photography with concert posters, vintage music memorabilia appearing on shelves where we used to keep books and travel souvenirs, the aesthetic shifting toward something that felt less like us and more like someone else's influence. 3 months after that reunion, I came home from a 4-day trip to find our living room rearranged completely, my model aircraft collection moved to storage, replaced by a record player and stacks of vinyl albums still in shipping boxes. "I'm redecorating," Emily explained, not looking up from her phone. Our place felt so corporate and sterile. I wanted to have more soul. More soul, or more of Damien's personality? The words came out before I could stop them. She looked up, and instead of denial or guilt, I saw irritation flash across her face. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I'm not blind, Emily. The constant texting, the late nights at music venues, the sudden interest in everything he's interested in, his stuff appearing in our home." She set her phone down with deliberate slowness. Damien and I are friends. We have shared interests. I'm sorry if my personal growth threatens you. Personal growth? This isn't personal growth, it's you trying to become someone else's version of interesting. Maybe his version is more interesting than the person I've been pretending to be for 4 years. That statement hung in the air between us, sharp and honest in ways that hurt more than any accusation could have, and I realized I'd been fighting to preserve something Emily had already discarded in her mind. I wanted concrete answers instead of evasive justifications, so the following week I did something I'd never done before. I checked her iPad while she was in the shower, feeling simultaneously justified and disgusted with myself for violating privacy I'd always respected. What I found was worse than I'd imagined: months of messages between Emily and Damien that read less like reconnecting old friends and more like active romance, complete with heart emojis, late-night voice messages where his gravelly musician voice called her babe and beautiful, and detailed discussions about meeting up that directly contradicted every work conference and girls' night she'd claimed. One message thread from 2 weeks prior stopped me cold. Emily asking Damien if she should just end things with Nathan, and Damien responding, "Don't rush it, babe. You've got stability with him while we figure out our vibe. No need to blow up your life until I'm sure about touring schedule." I screenshot everything, sent it to myself, then deleted the sent messages from her iPad, hands shaking with a combination of rage and something that felt like grief for the person I'd thought she was. When Emily emerged from the bathroom wrapped in a towel, I was sitting on our bed with her iPad in my hands, my phone displaying the screenshots I'd just sent myself. "We need to talk about Damien," I said, voice surprisingly calm despite the adrenaline coursing through me. Her face went through several emotions rapidly: surprise, panic, then something that looked almost like relief that she didn't have to keep pretending anymore. "You went through my messages? That's a huge violation of privacy, Nathan. You've been having an affair for 3 months. Let's not talk about violations." She sat down on the edge of the bed, not next to me but at a careful distance, pulling the towel tighter around herself like armor. "It's not an affair. We haven't slept together." "Oh, well, that makes the emotional betrayal so much better. Thank you for that technicality." I pulled up one of the messages, read it aloud. "Can't wait to see you Thursday after your shift. Wear that black dress I like. Going to make you forget all about your boring pilot boyfriend." She flinched but didn't deny it. "Damien understands parts of me that you don't." "What parts?" "The parts that need constant validation from someone who plays guitar in dive bars? The parts that need drama and chaos instead of stability? The parts that need passion, Nathan. Real, artistic, spontaneous passion. You're so focused on flight schedules and meal planning and retirement accounts that you've forgotten how to actually feel things." Her words hit like physical blows, each one carefully aimed at insecurities I didn't even know I had. "I feel plenty, Emily. I felt something when I planned that camping trip to Cathedral Rock for your birthday because you mentioned wanting to watch the sunset from there. I felt something when I learned to cook Thai food because you said you missed it from that restaurant near your childhood home. I felt something every time I rearranged my schedule so I could be home for things that mattered to you. But apparently, thoughtfulness isn't as exciting as whatever Damien's selling. That's exactly the problem. You plan everything. You schedule romance like it's a connecting flight. Damien is spontaneous, creative, alive in ways you've forgotten how to be." I stood up, the screenshots still glowing on my phone screen like evidence in a trial I was already losing. "So what now? You want to end this and run off with your musician? Live in his van while he tours dive bars in Tucson?" She looked at me then with an expression I'd never seen before, calculating and cold in ways that made me realize I'd fundamentally misunderstood who I was dealing with. "I don't want to end things with you, Nathan. I want both." The statement was so absurd I almost laughed. "You want both? What does that even mean?" "It means you provide things Damien can't: financial security, a stable home, health insurance, someone reliable who shows up when he says he will. Damien provides things you can't: excitement, passion, emotional intensity, someone who makes me feel alive instead of comfortable." I stared at her, waiting for the punchline, for some indication this was a terrible joke, but her face remained serious, almost earnest, like she'd just proposed a reasonable business arrangement. You want me to bankroll your life while you have a passionate affair with a broke musician? Is that what I'm hearing? I want you to be mature enough to understand that I can love different people for different reasons. Damien makes me feel things I haven't felt in years, but you make me feel safe. Why can't I have both? Because that's not how relationships work, Emily. That's not how respect works. That's how traditional relationships work. But we're evolved people. We can create something different, something that acknowledges my needs instead of forcing me into some outdated monogamy script. She was completely serious, sitting there in her towel explaining polyamory like it was a promotion I should be grateful to receive, and I felt something inside me finally break. Not my heart exactly, but my willingness to keep fighting for someone who'd already mentally checked out months ago. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, I said slowly, each word deliberate. You want to keep living here, keep sharing expenses, keep the benefits of this relationship, while openly dating Damien and probably eventually sleeping with him if you haven't already? I knew you'd be closed-minded about this. Closed-minded? I'm being realistic. This isn't evolved polyamory, Emily. This is you wanting your cake, eating it too, and expecting me to pay for both cakes while you decide which one tastes better. She stood up, anger finally showing through her calculated calm. Fine. If you can't handle me being honest about my needs, maybe we aren't compatible anymore. Maybe we aren't, I agreed, surprising both of us with how easily the words came out. Or maybe we never were, and I was just too comfortable to notice you were settling until something shinier came along. Over the next 2 weeks, the situation somehow got worse instead of better. Emily didn't move out or end things, but she stopped pretending to hide her relationship with Damien, coming home from his apartment at 3 in the morning reeking of cigarettes and his cologne, posting Instagram photos at his shows with captions about, "Finally finding my tribe." His leather jacket permanently claiming space on our coat rack like he'd already moved in spiritually even if not physically. I came home from a trip to Houston to find Damien's guitar leaning against our living room wall, his amplifier taking up space where my bookshelf used to be, tour posters for his band covering the walls like he was marking territory. He needed somewhere to store his equipment, Emily explained casually, not looking up from her phone where she was scrolling through photos from his latest show. His storage unit got broken into. So our home is his storage facility now? That's where we are. It's just temporary, Nathan. Don't be so dramatic about everything. But nothing about the situation felt temporary. It felt like a slow-motion invasion where I was being systematically erased from my own life, replaced piece by piece with someone else's aesthetic, someone else's priorities, someone else's claim on the woman I'd thought I'd eventually marry. The breaking point came from an unexpected direction. My parents. My parents had driven down from Flagstaff to celebrate my promotion to senior captain, something I'd worked toward for 6 years, a milestone that meant better routes, significant pay increase, and professional recognition that actually mattered. I'd reserved a table at North Italia for 6 o'clock, confirmed with Emily 3 times that week that she'd be there, that this mattered to me. Emily had promised she'd leave work by 5, meet us directly at the restaurant, even seemed genuinely happy about my promotion when I told her. 6 o'clock came and went with no Emily, my parents and I making awkward small talk over bread while I texted her increasingly concerned messages that went unanswered, showing read receipts but no responses. 6:30 passed, then 7, my mom's worried glances getting more frequent, my dad's jaw tightening. Maybe something happened at work, my mom offered kindly. An emergency patient? Maybe, I said, though I knew better, had learned to recognize the patterns of Emily's disappearing acts whenever Damien's schedule took priority. At 7:45, Emily finally walked in looking like she'd gotten dressed in the dark, hair disheveled, makeup smudged, wearing that black dress Damien had mentioned in his messages, her lipstick mostly gone except traces at the corners of her mouth. She slid into the empty chair without apologizing, barely acknowledging my parents as she drained the water glass in one gulp. "Sorry I'm late," she said casually, like she'd been stuck in traffic rather than arriving 2 hours behind schedule looking thoroughly debauched. Work was absolutely crazy today. My mother smiled politely, trying to smooth over the obvious tension. That's all right, dear. We were just telling Nathan how proud we are of his promotion. Senior captain at 31 is quite an achievement. Oh right, the promotion, Emily said, scrolling through her phone under the table. That's great, Nathan. Very impressive. The disinterest in her voice made my dad's fork pause halfway to his mouth, his eyes narrowing as he assessed the situation. We ordered food while Emily continued texting, occasionally glancing up to nod vaguely when the server spoke, eventually pointing randomly at the menu saying, "That one's fine," without reading what she'd selected. The conversation limped along painfully, my parents asking about Emily's work while she responded in distracted monosyllables, her phone buzzing constantly with messages she kept checking. Then my mom asked about our future plans, something she'd asked innocently at probably every dinner over the past 4 years. "So, have you two thought any more about buying a house? Nathan mentioned you'd been looking at places with backyards." Emily looked up from her phone then, and something in her expression shifted, like a switch flipping from distracted indifference to active hostility, and I knew whatever was about to happen would be bad. "Actually, I've been doing a lot of thinking about what I want my life to look like," Emily said, her voice taking on that rehearsed quality I'd learned to recognize. "And I've realized I've been living according to other people's expectations instead of my authentic desires." My mother smiled uncertainly. "Well, that's good, dear. Self-reflection is important. I've been exploring those authentic desires with someone who understands my soul in ways Nathan never could," Emily continued, her voice getting louder, other diners starting to glance our direction. "Someone who sees me as a complete person instead of just a comfortable accessory to his stable, predictable life." The table went silent, my dad's face turning red, my mom's smile freezing in place. "Emily, maybe we should discuss this privately," I said quietly, desperately trying to contain whatever explosion was coming. She ignored me completely, turning to address my parents directly. "I've been seeing someone else. Damien. He's a musician, an artist, someone who actually lives with passion and authenticity instead of just following routes someone else planned." My mother's hand went to her mouth, her eyes filling with tears, and my father sat perfectly still in that dangerous way that meant he was controlling himself. "Nathan was always my backup plan for stability," Emily announced to the entire section of the restaurant, her voice carrying across nearby tables where people had stopped eating to watch. "He's the safe choice, the practical option, the guy who makes sense on paper. But Damien is my passion. He's the person I actually want, not just the person who provides financial security and boring reliability." The words hit like physical blows, each one carefully chosen to inflict maximum damage, and I watched my promotion celebration dissolve into public humiliation, my parents' proud excitement curdling into horror and pity. "Why should I stop? I'm finally being honest about my needs," Emily continued when I tried to interrupt. "You should be thanking me for my honesty, Nathan. Most women wouldn't have the courage to admit they want both. The financial stability you provide and the emotional fulfillment Damien gives me." My mother was openly crying now, tears streaming down her face, and my father had gone pale, his hands gripping his napkins so tightly his knuckles were white. "I've figured out a modern solution," Emily continued, completely oblivious to the devastation she was causing. "I want to maintain our living arrangement and financial partnership while openly pursuing my relationship with Damien. It's called ethical non-monogamy, and it's actually very progressive. You should be emotionally mature enough to accept this arrangement because I'm being completely transparent about my needs instead of sneaking around." She said it like she was proposing a reasonable business merger, asking me to fund her affair while she openly dated someone else was somehow enlightened rather than cruelly selfish. "This is what evolved relationships look like," Emily said, looking at my mother with something like pity. "I understand your generation might not get it, but younger people understand that you can love multiple people for different reasons. Nathan provides security, Damien provides passion, and I deserve to have both." My father finally spoke, his voice dangerously quiet. "You're asking my son to bankroll your affair? To pay your bills while you sleep with another man? And you think that's evolved?" "I think it's honest," Emily shot back. More respectful than pretending I'm satisfied when I'm not. You've been sneaking around for months, I said. All those work conferences were you meeting Damien. You've been lying constantly. Because I knew you couldn't handle the truth. Look at you, all wounded because I'm trying to create something that meets my needs instead of conforming to your traditional relationship paradigms. My father stood abruptly, throwing his napkin on the table. We're leaving. Nancy, get your things. I'm not sitting here listening to you humiliate my son, my dad said, his voice shaking with controlled rage. I don't know what kind of person treats someone who loves them like this. Emily rolled her eyes. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You're all so stuck in traditional mindsets. No wonder Nathan's so rigid and boring. My mother spoke then, her voice barely above a whisper but cutting through Emily's rant. How dare you speak about my son like that after everything he's done for you? You're not enlightened. You're cruel. Emily stood up, grabbing her purse with theatrical indignation. I don't have to sit here and be attacked for being honest. I'm going to meet Damien at his gig, where people actually appreciate authenticity. She walked out without paying, without apologizing, without even a backward glance at the wreckage she'd created, leaving me sitting there with my devastated parents while other diners pretended they hadn't witnessed my complete public humiliation. I drove my parents back to their hotel in silence, my mother crying in the passenger seat while my dad stared out the window with his jaw clenched, and when I got back to the townhouse around midnight, I sat in my car in the driveway for 20 minutes, thinking about Emily probably texting Damien about how unreasonable we'd all been, and something inside me finally broke, not my heart, but my willingness to accept being treated like a convenient placeholder in someone else's journey. I didn't go inside that night. Instead, I drove to a 24-hour diner, ordered coffee I didn't drink, and made phone calls that would change everything. First call was to my airline's HR department, reaching the emergency contact line and requesting an immediate base transfer, citing personal emergency reasons. Boston has an opening, the HR representative said after checking their system. International routes, mostly transatlantic flights. Pay grade increase. Could have you transferred within 2 weeks if you're serious. I'm serious. Make it happen. Second call was to my college roommate Derek, who'd gone into real estate investment and had mentioned looking for Phoenix properties. Derek, I need to sell my half of a townhouse fast. I'll take a loss if necessary, I just need out. How fast are we talking? 72 hours if possible. He whistled low. That's aggressive, but yeah, I can probably work something out. Send me the details. Third call was to my bank, arranging to liquidate our joint savings account first thing when they opened, transferring my half into a new individual account Emily wouldn't have access to. Fourth call was to every shared credit card company, removing myself as joint holder immediately due to separation. By the time I went back to the townhouse at 5 in the morning, Emily was passed out in our bed still wearing that black dress, reeking of cigarette smoke and beer, her phone showing a text conversation with Damien where they'd laughed about my parents' dramatic overreaction and my pathetic inability to evolve beyond jealousy. I didn't wake her, just went to the garage and started packing systematically, my clothes, personal items, aviation books and memorabilia, laptop and documents, everything that was mine fitting into boxes I'd grabbed from the recycling bin. I worked silently and efficiently, years of pre-flight checklists training me to be methodical even when emotions ran high, and by noon I'd packed everything essential, arranged for movers to collect the boxes that afternoon and put them in storage until I figured out my Boston housing. Derek called around one. I can do this, but you're taking about a 15% loss on your equity. My investor group can close in 48 hours. Cash deal, no inspections. You in? I'm in. Send the paperwork. Emily woke up around 2, stumbling out looking confused by the boxes in the hallway. What's going on? Why is all your stuff packed? I'm leaving. Tonight. She blinked at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. Leaving? What do you mean? Like a trip. Like moving out. Permanently. I've transferred to Boston, sold my half of the townhouse, separated our finances. I'm done, Emily. The confusion shifted to panic. You can't just leave. We need to talk about this, work through things like adults. Like adults? You announced to my parents and an entire restaurant that I'm your backup plan while you pursue your passion with another man. You demanded I fund your affair. There's nothing to work through. I was upset. I said things I didn't mean. You meant every word. And honestly, I'm grateful you finally said it out loud instead of making me guess why you'd been treating me like an ATM with occasional boyfriend privileges. Her voice went soft and pleading. Nathan, please. We've built a life together. 4 years means something. You can't throw that away over one bad night. I'm not throwing it away. You already did that when you started sleeping with Damien emotionally, when you redecorated our home to match his aesthetic, when you made me feel like everything I offered wasn't good enough because it came with stability instead of artistic chaos. The movers arrived then, efficiently loading my boxes while Emily stood in the kitchen crying, trying different manipulation tactics, tears, anger, promises to change, threats about what people would think. I ignored all of it, supervised the movers, signed the paperwork. My phone buzzed with a text from Derek. Contracts signed. Money transfers tomorrow. You're free. I pulled out the notepad we kept for grocery lists, wrote one sentence. You made your choice clear. I'm choosing myself. Don't contact me. Left it on the counter weighted down by my house key. Nathan, wait, Emily said as I headed for the door, her voice breaking. Where am I supposed to go? How am I supposed to afford this place alone? Figure it out with Damien. He's your passion, remember? I'm sure his artistic soul will provide practical solutions. You're really going to leave me here with nothing? You have everything you wanted. Freedom from my boring stability, space to explore your authentic desires, a musician boyfriend who understands your soul. I'm just no longer subsidizing it. I walked out while she was still crying, drove to a hotel near the airport where I'd booked a room for the next 2 weeks, and for the first time in months I slept through the night without anxiety, without wondering what excuse Emily would have for where she'd been. The next morning, I blocked Emily's number on everything, changed my social media privacy settings to exclude her completely, and boarded a flight to Boston for apartment hunting, my entire life fitting into 3 suitcases while everything else sat in storage waiting for my new address. I found out what happened next through my parents, who heard it from Emily's sister about 2 months after I'd left, and the story was exactly as predictable as I'd expected, like watching a movie where you already know the ending but can't look away from the train wreck. Emily had moved Damien into the townhouse within 48 hours of my departure, posting Instagram photos of them cooking together with captions about authentic love and finally living with my soulmate, and hashtags like freedom and norigrits. According to Emily's sister, who seemed genuinely apologetic, the fantasy lasted about 3 weeks before reality crept in. Damien's successful music career consisted of playing dive bars 3 nights a week for $200 per gig when he was lucky, spending the rest of his time recording demos that never led to anything except noise complaints. Emily discovered quickly that romantic passion doesn't pay rent when your boyfriend refuses to get a day job because it would compromise his artistic integrity, and that spontaneity loses charm when it means coming home to find he spent grocery money on a vintage amplifier he absolutely needed. The Instagram posts changed tone within a month, going from celebration to vague posting about growth and learning what really matters, with photos showing increasing strain around Emily's eyes even when she was smiling. Damien became controlling once he'd moved in completely, questioning where Emily went and who she talked to with jealous intensity, except now there was no exciting forbidden element to make the drama feel romantic instead of exhausting. He'd isolated Emily from most of her friends, calling them toxic and unsupportive, which really meant they'd pointed out he was an unemployed mooch living off Emily's salary while contributing nothing except musical equipment and emotional volatility. He started monitoring her phone, showing up at her workplace unannounced to check she wasn't talking to other men, accusing her of still having feelings for me whenever she mentioned our shared past, creating fights over increasingly absurd things. The financial situation deteriorated rapidly once Emily realized she was covering rent, utilities, groceries, and all living expenses on her salary alone while Damien contributed maybe $400 monthly from sporadic gigs, most of which he'd spend on music gear before it could go toward bills. She'd burned through her savings within 2 months, started missing credit card payments, had to sell her car and buy a cheaper used one, all while Damien criticized her for being materialistic and not understanding his music was an investment that would pay off eventually. Then came the part that shocked me: Emily got pregnant. She discovered it after a brutal fight where Damien had accused her of flirting with a patient, thrown his guitar against the wall hard enough to put a hole in the drywall, then stormed out to stay at a bandmate's place for 3 days without calling. Emily took a pregnancy test during one of his absences, saw the positive result, and apparently had a complete breakdown realizing she was tied to this man in the worst possible way. When she told Damien about the pregnancy 2 weeks later, hoping maybe it would make him grow up and take responsibility, his response was to pack his guitar, his amplifier, his vinyl collection, and disappear to tour with the band in California, claiming she was trying to trap him and kill his creative spirit by suggesting he get a regular job to help support a child. He blocked her number, blocked her on social media, just vanished like their entire relationship had been some temporary gig he could walk away from when it stopped being fun, leaving Emily 3 months pregnant, behind on rent, and facing eviction. Emily's work performance suffered dramatically as the pregnancy progressed and stress mounted, missing shifts due to morning sickness and emotional breakdowns, showing up late because her anxiety was so bad she'd sit in her car crying, making mistakes with patient records that got her written up. Her boss finally had to let her go when Emily missed an entire week without calling in, later claiming she'd been too depressed to get out of bed after Damien left. Without her income, Emily couldn't make rent, couldn't keep up with her car payment, couldn't afford basic expenses, and the landlord started eviction proceedings after she fell 2 months behind. She moved back in with her sister, sleeping on a couch in a 1-bedroom apartment, 7 months pregnant with Damien's baby and nowhere else to turn. That's when Emily started desperately trying to find me, hiring some skip tracing service she couldn't afford, calling my old airline colleagues, even showing up at my parents' house in Flagstaff completely unannounced, pregnant and crying on their doorstep, begging them to tell her where I'd gone. My mom said it was one of the hardest things she'd ever done, looking at this pregnant girl who'd so cruelly humiliated her son, and telling her firmly but not unkindly that I'd moved on with my life and didn't want contact. Nathan made his choice to leave, my mom had told her. You need to respect that and figure out your situation without him. Emily had broken down completely on their porch, sobbing about how she'd made a terrible mistake, how Damien had manipulated her, how I was the only person who'd ever truly loved her and she'd thrown it away for a fantasy that turned into a nightmare. My dad had to physically close the door while she was still pleading, both of them feeling terrible but knowing that letting her back into my life would only drag me back into chaos I'd worked hard to escape. But Emily was persistent in ways desperation makes people, and she eventually tracked down one of my pilot friends through mutual connections, learned I'd transferred to Boston, discovered through social media I'd been promoted to international flight captain and recently posted a photo in front of a building in the Seaport district. She'd spent days searching real estate listings in that area, cross-referencing building photos with my background, until she figured out which luxury building I'd moved into, then drained what little remained in her bank account to buy a one-way ticket to Boston. My parents called to warn me she was coming, that she'd mentioned her plan to Emily's sister in a moment of desperate confession, giving me just enough heads up to mentally prepare for an extremely uncomfortable confrontation I'd hoped to avoid forever. The call from my building's front desk came on a Tuesday evening while I was making dinner, the doorman explaining there was a pregnant woman in the lobby claiming to be an old friend who needed to speak with me urgently. I'll come down, I said, not wanting Emily in my space, knowing that maintaining the confrontation in a semi-public lobby would keep things from escalating. The elevator doors opened and I saw her, Emily sitting on a leather couch looking wrecked, 7 months pregnant, wearing sweatpants and an oversized hoodie, hair in a messy ponytail, dark circles under her eyes, that look of desperate exhaustion from running out of options. Nathan, she said, voice breaking. Thank you for coming down. What do you need, Emily? No warmth, just professional courtesy, and I watched her flinch but push forward anyway. I know I have no right to ask anything after what I did. But I'm in trouble. Real trouble. Damien left me, disappeared to California. I'm 7 months pregnant, lost my job, got evicted, staying on my sister's couch and she's kicking me out. I don't have money, insurance, anywhere to go when the baby comes. Despite everything, I felt something human respond to her suffering. That's terrible. I'm genuinely sorry. But I'm not sure what you expect me to do about it. I thought maybe you'd let me stay here for a little while, just until I get back on my feet. The audacity took my breath away. She'd publicly humiliated me, then expected me to provide housing for her and another man's baby. You want to move into my apartment? After everything? Because you're a good person. Because I made a horrible mistake and I'm begging for help. The right thing isn't me rescuing you from consequences of your choices. It's you figuring out your situation using resources that don't involve the man you publicly destroyed. I was wrong about everything. Damien manipulated me, abandoned me. You were the one who actually loved me, showed up consistently, and I threw it away. So you're here because your first choice didn't work out? I'm here because I made the biggest mistake of my life and I'm hoping you're kind enough to help anyway. I looked at her pregnant and crying, felt absolutely nothing except distant pity. I'm seeing someone. Her name is Rachel. She's a physician assistant at Mass General. We met 3 months ago. She's upstairs right now. Emily's face crumbled. You're with someone else already? Already? It's been 7 months. Did you expect me to wait around? I pulled out my phone, transferred $500 to her Venmo. That should cover a flight back to Phoenix and immediate expenses. I'm also giving you contact information for social services that can help with pregnancy resources, housing assistance, job placement. Nathan, please, what happened wasn't Damien manipulating you. You made those choices. You chose excitement over stability, and that's fine except you wanted both, and that's not how respect works. I treated you terribly. I know I did. And now you need exactly the kind of stable, reliable, boring support you rejected. But that's not my responsibility. You have resources, family, social services, community programs. I wrote down phone numbers for pregnancy resource centers and handed them to her. These people can actually help you. I won't, because helping you would mean sacrificing the peace I've built after you destroyed what we had. So you're just sending me away with $500 and phone numbers? I'm sending you away with more help than you gave me when you announced I was your backup plan in front of my parents. I turned toward the elevator, but she called after me. I loved you, Nathan. I just didn't know how to appreciate it until it was gone. I paused, looked back. That's the saddest part. You didn't love me. You loved what I provided. When you thought you found excitement without stability, you dropped me fast. Now you're learning neither exists without the other, and I'm sorry you had to learn it this way, but I'm not sorry I'm not there to catch you. I went back up to my apartment where Rachel was plating pasta, and when she asked if everything was okay, I told her the truth, that my ex had shown up desperate and pregnant, that I'd given her money and resources but made it clear I'd moved on, and the best revenge isn't hatred or cruelty, it's building something better with someone who actually values what you offer from the start. Effort to look impressive, just showing up as myself. The elevator doors opened and I saw her immediately, Emily sitting on one of the leather couches looking absolutely wrecked, 7 months pregnant with a belly that seemed too big for her small frame, wearing sweatpants and an oversized hoodie, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, dark circles under her eyes, and that look of desperate exhaustion that comes from running out of options. She stood up when she saw me, awkward with the pregnancy weight, her face doing something complicated between hope and shame and desperation. Nathan, she said, her voice breaking, thank you for coming down. I wasn't sure you would. My doorman said it was urgent. What do you need, Emily? No warmth in my voice, just professional courtesy, and I watched her flinch at the coldness but push forward anyway. I know I have no right to ask anything after what I did, after how I treated you and your family. But I'm in trouble, Nathan. Real trouble. And I don't have anyone else. Her voice cracked, tears streaming down her face. I crossed my arms, maintaining distance while she cried, the doorman pretending to be very interested in his computer screen. What kind of trouble? Damien left me. He's gone, blocked me on everything, disappeared to California with his band. I'm 7 months pregnant, I lost my job, I got evicted, I'm staying on my sister's couch and she's about to kick me out. I don't have money, I don't have insurance, I don't have anywhere to go when the baby comes. She was sobbing now, messy and desperate, and despite everything she'd done, I felt something human respond to her suffering. That's terrible, Emily. I'm genuinely sorry you're in that situation. But I'm not sure what you expect me to do about it. I thought maybe you'd let me stay here for a little while, just until I can get back on my feet, find a new job, figure out a plan for the baby. I wouldn't be any trouble, I just need somewhere safe. The audacity took my breath away. She'd publicly humiliated me, demanded I fund her affair, called me boring and not good enough, then expected me to provide housing for her and another man's baby when her fantasy imploded. You want to move into my apartment? After everything that happened? I know it's a lot to ask. It's not a lot to ask, Emily. It's completely inappropriate and honestly delusional. We're not together. We're not friends. You made it very clear I was just your backup plan for stability. Why would I let you move in? Because you're a good person, she said desperately, reaching for my arm, which I stepped back from. Because you always cared about doing the right thing. Because I made a horrible mistake and I'm paying for it, and I'm begging you for help. The right thing isn't me rescuing you from consequences of your own choices. The right thing is you figuring out your situation using resources available that don't involve the man you publicly destroyed. She was crying harder, her whole body shaking. I was wrong about everything. Damien wasn't who I thought he was. He manipulated me, used me, abandoned me the second things got real. You were the one who actually loved me, who showed up consistently, who planned a future, and I threw it away for someone who didn't care enough to stick around. So you're here because you finally realized I was the better option? Because your first choice didn't work out? I'm here because I made the biggest mistake of my life and I'm hoping you're kind enough to help me anyway, even though I don't deserve it. I looked at her standing there pregnant and crying, thought about the woman I'd planned to propose to, the woman who'd announced I was her backup plan, and felt absolutely nothing except distant pity. I'm seeing someone, I said quietly. Her name is Rachel. She's a physician assistant at Mass General. We met 3 months ago, started dating seriously about 6 weeks ago. She's upstairs right now, probably wondering why I've been gone so long. Emily's face crumbled completely. You're with someone else already? Already? Emily, it's been 7 months. Did you expect me to wait around pining while you lived out your authentic desires with Damien? I just thought you'd still care enough to help me even if you'd moved on. I do care enough to help, just not the way you want. I pulled out my phone, transferred $500 to her Venmo. That should cover a flight back to Phoenix and some immediate expenses. I'm also giving you contact information for social services that can help with pregnancy resources, housing assistance, job placement. Nathan, please, I'm going to be very clear about something, Emily. What happened between us wasn't Damien manipulating you. You made those choices yourself. You chose to prioritize excitement over stability, and that's fine except you wanted to keep the benefits of stability while pursuing the passion, and that's not how respect works. She stared at me like I'd slapped her. I treated you terribly. I know I did. Yes, you were cruel and selfish and took me for granted. And now you're facing a situation where you need exactly the kind of stable, reliable, boring support you rejected. But that's not my responsibility anymore. You have resources, your family, social services, community programs. Use them. I wrote down phone numbers for pregnancy resource centers on a business card and handed it to her. These people can actually help you. I can't, or more accurately, I won't, because helping you would mean sacrificing the peace I've worked hard to build after you destroyed what we had. Emily took the card with shaking hands. So that's it? You're just going to send me away with $500 and some phone numbers. I'm going to send you away with more help than you gave me when you announced I was your backup plan in front of my parents. Take the help being offered and build something better. I turned to walk back to the elevator, but she called after me. I loved you, Nathan. I really did. I just didn't know how to appreciate it until it was gone. I paused, looked back at her standing there pregnant and broken. That's the saddest part, Emily. You didn't love me. You loved what I provided. And when you thought you found someone who could provide excitement without stability, you couldn't drop me fast enough. Now you're learning that neither exists without the other, and I'm sorry you had to learn it this way, but I'm not sorry I'm not there to catch you. I got in the elevator and went back up to my apartment where Rachel was plating the pasta we'd made together, and when she asked if everything was okay, I told her the truth, that my ex had shown up desperate and pregnant, that I'd given her money and resources but made it clear I'd moved on, that seeing her had only confirmed I'd made the right choice leaving when I did, and the best revenge isn't hatred or cruelty. It's building something better with someone who actually values what you offer. From the start,